This here is the Samsung Galaxy S25 FE, and if the design looks familiar, we can't blame you. This phone looks nearly identical to the Galaxy S25 Plus or the S24 FE, but it costs just $650 right now, although this can obviously vary by market. So, is this mid-range phone worth your money? To find out what it's like to own the S25 FE, we used this phone as a daily driver for the last week. We installed all our usual apps, played games, and of course took thousands of photos with the cameras. And we immediately had things to complain about. In terms of design, it's hard to spot any difference between this phone and the Galaxy S25 Plus. Only the display bezel on the bottom is slightly asymmetrical and a bit taller, and the camera rings sport a slightly different design. The display measures 6.7 inches and the phone is 7.3 millimeters thick. In general, the S25 FE feels just like any other premium flagship phone in the hand. The front and back are protected by Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, and there's no fancy anti-glare action going on here like on the S25 Ultra. You can get this phone in navy, icy blue, and of course black or white. We have the jet black model, and we're definitely fans of the design. The sides of the phone are flat and unfortunately pretty sharp. The aluminum edges on the phone are silver regardless of the color choice, so you're really just choosing how the back of the phone looks here. On the rear, you're greeted by 3 large camera rings and an LED flash. On the bottom, you can find the USB 3.2 charging port, which also supports video out. It's nice to see Samsung finally include a fast enough port for external monitors on the FE model, meaning that you now have access to the Samsung DeX desktop mode here as well. You've got 2 SIM slots here, but eSIMs are also supported as you'd expect. The fingerprint sensor in the S25 FE is excellent for an optical reader. We can reliably unlock the phone despite the placement being a little bit too low, and the speed isn't too bad. Of course, it will still feel slow compared to ultrasonic 3D sensors like on the Galaxy S25 Ultra or Google Pixel 10. The Galaxy S25 FE's camera system isn't anything new. Aside from packing the same 50 megapixel wide camera with optical stabilization and 12 megapixel ultra wide like the Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE, the S25 FE also has an 8 megapixel telephoto camera. Photos from the FE look natural with good detail and balanced colors. Samsung's image processing is not overly aggressive here, so you do not get overly saturated or sharpened shots. Skin tones look natural and accurate, and the ultra-wide lens delivers consistent colors and sharp enough photos, although the low light performance isn't particularly great. We would recommend everyone to use the 50 megapixel shooting mode for photos with the main lens. On nearly every single Samsung phone, the 50 megapixel mode will consistently provide more detailed, natural, and less processed shots compared to the standard 12 megapixel JPEGs. Speaking of less processed, we also extensively tested the RAW photo function on the S25 FE. It's a massive shame that you're only limited to 12 megapixels when taking RAW photos, but at least it's an option. Video recording is possible with up to 8K resolution at 30 frames per second, but we tested a more reasonable 4K resolution and found videos with older cameras pretty good. The image is sharp and the recordings look super smooth. The 12 megapixel front selfie camera isn't going to blow anyone's mind. You can get reasonably detailed selfies, and there are some preset filters to play around with in the camera app. Selfie video with 4K 60 frames per second is supported. The Galaxy S25 FE has an average display. It's an AMOLED panel with a Full HD Plus resolution, which is on the lower end for a 6.7-inch smartphone display, but it's still sharp enough to be honest. Peak brightness sits at 1900 nits, which is a downgrade from the S20 Plus's 2600 nits, but you can still use it under the sun. It will just look a little bit dim. The refresh rate is 120Hz, so no complaints there. Now, we had a bit of a deja vu moment when reviewing this display since the specs are near identical to the one on the Galaxy A36, which we also have sitting around in the office. It's a shame that Samsung didn't go with a higher end panel for this year's FE model. This phone actually has really solid speakers which get close to the quality and volume of flagship speakers like the Google Pixel 10 Pro XLs. However, we noticed that it struggles a bit with bass and has some distortion at high levels. Still, scrolling on TikTok here is a blast. The FE is rocking last year's flagship Exynos 2400 chipset and comes with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage by default. Sadly, this phone doesn't have the base 12GB of RAM like on the rest of the Galaxy S25 lineup, which could help in games or other intensive tasks. Benchmarks show some really promising performance coming from this phone. In single and multi-core tasks, it's just 30% slower than the flagship S25 Ultra, but slightly outperforms the Snapdragon 8S Gen 4 in the Poco F7. That means that you're not going to have any issues scrolling Instagram or doing heavy multitasking. GPU performance also looks solid. In 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme, it's 30% behind the S25 Ultra and again about 5% faster than the Poco F7. So, gaming performance should be just as great as on the Poco. The gaming experience on the S25 FE is a little bit underwhelming considering the high benchmark scores. In Fortnite, we get an average of 55 to 60 FPS with max settings, with no option to increase the FPS limit by dropping settings. That's a shame considering that the Galaxy S25 Ultra easily gets over 100 FPS, and even the far cheaper Galaxy A36 gets the same result in Fortnite. That's probably because Fortnite is better optimized for the Snapdragon chip in that phone compared to the Exynos 2400. Minecraft with its new graphical update also takes quite a toll on the device. If we fly around on max settings, the FPS drops to just about 13 after 5 minutes. Surface temperatures also climb to a scorching 49 degrees. The Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE running the same Exynos chip also gets that warm. PUBG Mobile is a breeze here, regardless of how high you crank up the settings. We're able to turn everything up to the max and still get a consistent high refresh experience. So all in all, the S25 FE does well enough in games, but still isn't the best choice for gamers. The flagship Galaxy S25s will do significantly better in most titles. This year's FE model packs a slightly larger 4900 mAh battery. The charging speed tops out at 45 watts wired and 15 watts wireless, which is pretty quick all things considered. We usually ended the day with around 40% battery remaining from a full charge in the morning. In our YouTube HD video battery drain test, the S25 FE manages a respectable 24 hours of constant playback at max brightness. That's a great result, and only 2 hours under the Galaxy S25 Ultra and 5 whole hours more than Google's flagship Pixel 10 Pro XL. But those phones are also much brighter. The S25 FE is shipped with the Android 16 based One UI 8. Combined with 7 years of software and security upgrades, losing support isn't a worry at all. Besides the update policy, One UI has its usual perks. There's options for customizing anything using Samsung add-ons, settings to tune every bit of your user experience, and a general overwhelming amount of features that you might or might not use. Animations are smooth and the design is overall very consistent. The only thing that might bother you is the amount of pre-installed apps. Actually, when we first started the phone, we were delightfully greeted by a screen asking whether we wanted to install Samsung's own apps or not. And of course, we unselected redundant apps like Samsung Internet and Health, which made it a lot more surprising to start the phone and immediately see the apps we chose not to download installed. Why did they make it an option then? There's not much to say about AI features. Gemini, Circle to Search, and the usual Android 16 AI features are all here, and Samsung also has some AI video and image editing functions built into the Gallery app. But we do appreciate Samsung finally including DeX thanks to the new USB 3.2 port. If you plug your phone into an external monitor, you can run a separate desktop with apps like Chrome featuring desktop-style tab management. You can even use a phone screen as a touchpad if you don't have a mouse at hand. Ultimately, the Galaxy S25 FE is objectively a good phone. The cameras are solid, the build is excellent, and it's hard to tell apart from the regular Galaxy S25 Plus. But we would advise anyone who's interested in buying it to wait until the price drops significantly, which always happens with Samsung phones after a while. Right now, there are far better options. If you're a gamer, then forget about this phone and get a cheaper Poco F7 or regular Galaxy S25 for the same price. And if you're interested in a solid camera phone, then there's the Google Pixel 9a for less as well. The new Xiaomi 15T Pro might also be an interesting alternative. We think that the Galaxy S25 FE will only make sense at around $550 in the US. If you're looking for alternatives, consider checking out our full review of the Google Pixel 9a.